Gaming Bolt presents Top 30 Open World Games of this Generation. Open world games, you love them or you hate them. You can't get enough of them or you want nothing to do with them. At one point in history, 3D open world games were innovative, as seen in Urban Chaos. Then they became massive and stunning in scale with titles like Grand Theft Auto 3 and Vice City. The genre hasn't stopped evolving, and this generation presents arguably the peak of open world gaming as a whole. So let's take a look at the top 30 open world games of this generation and why you should play them. Mad Max. It's a lonely road out there, full of endless deserts and roaming bandits. Mad Max takes the sheer expanse of its landscape and ties it closely to vehicular play. You're either roaming the land, scoping out different bases to take out, or assaulting convoys for precious rewards. A decent story and top-notch characterization for Max help push the game past your average cinematic adaptation. Mafia III. Story-wise, Mafia III already had us hooked as protagonist Lincoln Clay went about establishing his dominance in New Bordeaux. That means plenty of shootouts and storming bases belonging to the Marcano family. It's what happens going forward as Clay has to double-cross some allies, tighten his control on the city, and decide what kind of ruler he wants to be. The atmosphere of 1968, from its politics to the racism inherent, is captured frighteningly well, and even if the game can be somewhat of a grind, Mafia 3 is still worth checking out. Just Cause 3. Just Cause 3 had its share of issues at launch, especially with performance and loading times on consoles. The game offered a massive world to wreak havoc in. Was it as wholly impressive as Just Cause 2? Well, no, but there were still vehicles to surf, planes to grapple, and heaps of explosions to trigger. The world itself was also big enough to keep you busy with various side missions and challenges to complete. Mass Effect Andromeda. Yes, Mass Effect Andromeda was disappointing and continues to have its share of issues. However, it did bring some relatively interesting new characters and a decent storyline that had some clumsy execution. The planets themselves are large and full of things to do, but they're really meant as a playground for the combat. So create a build with engineer, biotic, and soldier skills and go wild, priming and detonating targets as necessary. LA Noire. Team Bondi may have shut down, but the uncanny valley that it crossed with LA Noire's facial animations lives on. To its credit, the game also offers a strong single-player campaign focused on investigations, questioning witnesses, and exploring the seedy underbelly of Los Angeles in the 1940s to 50s. So if you're a guy who likes his video games with a hint of Scorsese, LA Noire is for you. Middleearth: Shadow of Mordor. Dismissed as an Assassin's Creed clone from the outset, Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor's intricate world served as an excellent playground for the Nemesis system. This allowed players to brainwash orcs, set them against each other, and infiltrate Mordor's leadership to kill the Black Hand of Sauron. The combat, which expanded further on the free-flow system of the Batman Arkham series, was also top-notch and kept us hooked through many a Nemesis encounter. Watch Dogs 2. In terms of standard Ubisoft open-world titles, there may not have been much expectation from Watch Dogs 2. As it turns out, it was surprisingly fun. Whether you were sneaking across rooftops or navigating around San Francisco, gaining followers, hacking into the private lives of citizens, and completing the myriad of other tasks available, Watch Dogs 2 may not have set new standards for the genre, but it's still a really fun open-world game overall. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The world of Alrest is massive, sprawling, and home to a number of dangerous enemies. It's not odd to find yourself one-hit killed in the starting zones. Nevertheless, the sheer gorgeous spectacle of these massive landscapes coupled with their various flora and fauna helps it come alive. The complexity of the blade system and all the different quests, events, and secrets to unearth further ensure that you're spending a lot of time grinding out all of that content in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Assassin's Creed 4: Black Flag. After Assassin's Creed 3 failed to set expectations on fire, Ubisoft had to redeem itself with Assassin's Creed 4: Black Flag. Not only did it offer a more interesting hero in Edward Kenway, but the world was bustling with all sorts of possibilities like sunken treasure, hidden ruins, crazy ship battles, and more vibrant fortress assaults. The standard Assassin's Creed gameplay was intact, but the world felt more realized, with the ship providing an excellent new core mechanic. Tom Clancy's The Division. Ubisoft Massive's third-person shooter-looter had its share of bumps in the road after launch. You could argue that its open-world locations could be utilized better, but there's still a smattering of content to go through. Side missions and story missions aside, it's great to see sections like the West Side Piers where skirmish and resistance takes place, or the Dark Zone where PvE and PvP collide. The Division isn't perfect, but for scratching that looter itch, it can be pretty darn compelling. Ghost Recon Wildlands. An open world full of camps to assault, various terrain to navigate, and tons of weapons to collect. Sounds familiar. Despite Ghost Recon Wildlands simplifying much of the stealth from the franchise, it still delivers a fun open world shooter. And hey, if you really want a more challenging experience, try going solo in Ghost mode with permadeath enabled. Various events and PvP add more variety, while plenty of open world havoc is possible thanks to vehicles and attack choppers. Sunset Overdrive. The SpiderMan before Insomniac's SpiderMan. Sunset Overdrive took the outlandish weaponry best seen in Ratchet & Clank and translated it into a radical open world. The movement system was simply a joy to use, especially as you tore down legions of the OD'd. Sunset Overdrive had its share of interesting challenges, unique characters, and a colorful world that just felt fun to roam around in. So if you're done with Spider-Man, then you might want to take a trip to Sunset City. No Man's Sky. Following an underwhelming launch, Hello Games committed itself to No Man's Sky, releasing numerous free updates like story missions and quests to planetary vehicles and true multiplayer. Don't get us wrong, No Man's Sky can still be a huge grind for resources and base building, but if you're into chilling out, exploring outlandish planets, and even venturing under the sea, No Man's Sky may be your jam with its vast universe. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. For all the problems that some fans may have with the narrative, Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain offers some very fun open-world gameplay. The missions themselves seem fairly routine, and the loading times during helicopter rides can be draining. Still, the game throws in enough freedom to approach objectives as creatively or bizarrely as you want, orchestrating your own playstyle and taking in the stellar production values that creator Hideo Kojima is known for. Forza Horizon 3. Playground Games had really started making a name for itself with Forza Horizon 2. However, Forza Horizon 3 was the first game in the series to be developed exclusively for the Xbox One. The size of the world is pretty great, with Australia providing a gorgeous backdrop for killer racing moments. However, the sheer gameplay loop of Horizon Festival really took a hold, pushing us to establish more festivals, locate more barns, and unlock more cars. Using drone mode to scout out the lay of the land and being able to customize different events didn't hurt either. Batman Arkham Knight. As a sequel to Batman Arkham City, Batman Arkham Knight might not have flowed together nearly as well. Still, it provided some good open-world variety, from investigating crime scenes and catching notorious criminals to shutting down militia checkpoints throughout the city. The Batmobile could be seen as an annoyance, especially when it comes to combat, but the chase sequences and its use in puzzles were fun. Middle-earth Shadow of War. Bigger may not always be better, but the fusion of Shadow of Mordor's Nemesis system with Battle for Middle-earth's epic conflicts works out pretty well in Middle-earth Shadow of War. The basic open world still presents side content to rush through, orcs to slay, and more than a few annoyed enemies out to get you. It's all the extra layers like fortress assaults with their multi-tiered stages, the presence of bodyguards that can protect you, and the loot and abilities that will keep you going. Oh, and it doesn't hurt that the microtransactions have been effectively removed as well. Marvel's Spider-Man. Insomniac Games' Spider-Man takes the movement offered in Sunset Overdrive and expands on it like crazy, offering the best web-swinging system since Spider-Man 2 and a seamless combat system. You could argue that the open-world missions aren't all that inventive, but it's that feeling of being Spider-Man and zipping through them with all of the movement abilities that make the gameplay so much fun. Of course, it also doesn't hurt that the main campaign is excellent, with great voice acting, stellar visuals, and some genuinely heartbreaking moments. Final Fantasy XV. Yes, the story is by and large a fractured mess spread across numerous properties, but regardless, there's just something appealing about the world of Final Fantasy XV. Traveling across the countryside with your homies, bonding over campfires and learning cooking, or just battling the vast array of demons populating the land can make for a fun experience. At the very least, the game looks incredibly sharp, with the fantasy aspect meshing well with a more down-to-earth and realistic aesthetic. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. As a remaster, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition contains many of the bugs inherent in the original release. However, the strength of its open world, the sheer freedom in doing whatever you please, or the range of things to discover is simply awe-inspiring. Skyrim may not win points for its combat, but its quest writing, handcrafted dungeons, and exploration, from sprawling vistas to cities that feel alive, cannot be denied. Fallout 4. Fallout 4 is probably one of the more controversial open-world titles and sequels this generation. Though its loop of exploring, shooting, and looting can be incredibly addictive, some fans took issue with the streamlined mechanics and perk systems. Even if you ignore the settlements and Radiant quests, there are plenty of interesting stories to uncover. The sheer detail and random occurrences in the world also helps keep us entrenched in the Commonwealth, even when everything else has turned to dust. Far Cry 5. Design-wise, there might not be anything wholly new, but Ubisoft makes numerous small improvements, emphasizing exploration. The shooting feels tight, the stealth aspects are strong, and the campaign is fully playable in co-op. Did we mention that Hope's County looks gorgeous and has no towers? Assassin's Creed Origins. Ubisoft's revamp of the Assassin's Creed franchise didn't just slap some RPG elements on it and call it a day. Assassin's Creed Origins featured a much larger open world than before, with a heavier focus on hack-and-slash combat, loot, and exploration. The story might have been wonky, but the side quests feel strong, narrative-wise. Needless to say, the sheer range of content ultimately props the experience up. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Thankfully, Assassin's Creed Odyssey took the formula of Origins and made it better, leaning heavier into the action RPG/looter genre. Odyssey's world offered more variety, a richer combat system, and even more side content to complete. To its credit, the story is pretty good, playing out over 3 compelling acts with their own mysteries, mythical beasts, and plot twists. But it's the open world and the constant pursuit of min-maxing that will keep you going. Forza Horizon 4. It's not enough that Forza Horizon 4 provides the sprawling land of Britain for racing or a huge selection of cars to race. It's the gameplay loop, the dynamic seasons that provides new events, or the shared world interface which lets you link up with other players. The multiplayer could use some improvements, but in terms of freedom, mission design, racing mechanics, and progression, Forza Horizon 4 is perhaps the finest racing game out there. Grand Theft Auto 5. They say no king rules forever, but Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto 5 shows no signs of slowing down, even with Red Dead Online on the horizon. Even if you divorce the online component from the game, there's just so much attention to detail, memorable plot lines, and lovable characters to find in the campaign. Some mundane things do get in the way. That port scouting mission was a killer, but it only amplified the excitement of the heists. And again, if you ever get bored of the story, there are plenty of side missions, random activities, sports, and whatnot to experience in Los Santos. Horizon Zero Dawn. Also touted as one of the finest PS4 exclusives ever made, Horizon Zero Dawn is simply wondrous in its open-world design. The sheer attention to detail in its graphics meshes incredibly well with the number of quests and interesting locations to discover. Hunting giant machines can result in epic encounters, but there's something cool about embarking into unknown territory, perhaps stumbling upon a cauldron or an interesting bit of lore. Even with all of the heavy contenders, Horizon Zero Dawn still does a great job in creating intrigue with its world. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. A total reimagining of the typical Zelda formula that we know and love. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild gives unprecedented freedom to its players. The story serves as nothing more than context for the epic adventures undertaken, and Nintendo has done a fantastic job ensuring there's something interesting around every corner. Say what you will about weapon breakage, lack of real Zelda dungeons, or even how hard enemies can be, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is an open-world experience unlike any other. Plus, it makes towers interesting. What more could you want? The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There were plenty of expectations from CD Projekt Red's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, but none of us could have ever imagined it delivering on almost all of them. A vast world full of amazing characters, in-depth quests with stellar writing, a story campaign that was equal parts endearing and epic, and of course, the world itself, full of unique locations and things to discover sealed the deal on what was an amazing game. Sure, the combat was just fine, but that didn't take away from what was essentially Geralt's last hurrah, or too substantial and excellently made DLC. Red Dead Redemption 2. The current king of open world titles, and for good reason. Rockstar Games' painstaking attention to detail is apparent in every aspect of the game. Cinematic presentation, beautiful graphics, variety of activities, side mission design, and so on. The world itself encourages discovery as you look for campfires, help out denizens, or rob people blind. Not enough can be said about how the game handles weapon customization, horse bonding, pacing, characterization, and much more in such an intricate manner. All you need to know is that Red Dead Redemption 2 is worth playing and then replaying for a long time. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.